Did you ever wonder what multimodal text across different disciplines might look like? And do you ever think about what are the benefits for having my students create multimodal text, and how can the creation and use of multimodal text support students' disciplinary literacy abilities? That's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Hi everyone, I'm Lee Hall from Literacy Teachers, and I'm all about giving you the tools you need to inspire, motivate, and change how your students read and write for academic success. If you're new here, make sure you hit the subscribe button so that you get new notifications as I put out new videos each week. All right, so today we're going to be talking about how do you create multimodal text across disciplines, and what are the benefits of doing so, and what are some examples? What does it look like in practice? And to help us understand that, I am going to be sharing with you an interview that I did with Erin Silcox, a middle and high school teacher at a residential treatment facility. She works with adolescents in science and general education classes. And so let's hear from Erin, her experiences about how she has worked with multimodal text and what she sees as the similarities and differences in creating multimodal text across different academic disciplines. All right, so I'm here today with Erin Silcox, and Erin teaches science and general education classes at a residential treatment center here in the United States. And she's the one that has done some really interesting work around creating multimodal text across disciplines. And she's going to be sharing with us today some examples of that work, what she has done, and what she has learned in terms of what it means to create multimodal text, the similarities and the differences across different academic disciplines. So Erin, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm wondering if you can just talk a little bit about your experiences, maybe the lessons that you designed, what you wanted your students to do, anything that you care to share about working with multimodal text in the disciplines.
Yeah, so there are two things that I did for this part, this assignment. And the first thing was part of a lesson that I'm about to teach in like 2 weeks. And it's on teaching students how the phases of the moon work. And so one of the things that I did for a science multimodal assignment was simple, and it was really straightforward, but it was based off of a commonsense.org, or I think that's the name of the website, lesson plan, where it prompted having them use a moon phase app to look up a specific date and report on and sort of draw a picture of, put a little bit of data about the phase that the moon will be on that date. And so what I chose to do was I'm going to be offering the option of not only can they draw it, but they can also use Google Drawings to do their drawing. And so that's what you'll see is my exemplar of that project. The other thing I did was totally made up and not connected to any class, but totally pleasant for myself. And it is a comparison of the Hunger Games book and movie, and maybe less of a comparison, but more of an argument that they go really well together and that they work really well. And so that's an infographic.
And so then, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So then you made multimodal text, or you're going to have your students make multimodal text in science and English language arts, and then you've got this diagram. Can I go ahead and put up the diagram?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and the Venn diagram.
Yeah. All I have to do is find. There we go. Yeah. So you made this Venn diagram that I think is really helpful for people to look at in terms of comparison, in terms of what it means to do a multimodal composition in science versus what it means to do it in language arts. And there's a large number of differences, which I think is very interesting, and some similarities. Do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah.
What would you think teachers should pay attention to that are looking at this?
So if you're a science teacher, the things that end up getting favored when using multimodal composition, I think maybe across the board, is accuracy. It needs to be, and as science teachers, we need to have our students always thinking about how accurate is my representation of anything. it could be data, it could be a drawing, a scientific drawing. You know, with the discipline of science, we need to have students understand that accuracy and validity are super important. So what I found with this very, as you'll see, very, very simple project, but with the little moon phase picture, I was accurate. So I used several tools actually on the Google Drawings to make a few different star representations for the background. The background is completely black, and that was in efforts to make my Google drawing look pretty close to what I saw on the moon phase app. The other thing that was necessary to be pretty accurate was the actual moon. So making sure that it was a perfect circle, making sure that it was the right color, and arranged and shaded correctly using the right shapes. I think there could have been several different ways to do it, but I chose to do a circle with then a crescent over it. And then in the scientific multimodal composition, the data was really important. So making sure that not only did I have an accurate representation of what the moon actually looks like in the sky, I also made sure that I had the correct date, which is simple and easy, but it's a good launching point for then moving into when we're dealing with more complex data and that kind of thing. Percentage illuminated, and then I got this information from the moon phase app. So I was pretty anchored in that app, and that's where I got all that information. And then the nature of this project was, like I mentioned before, a hook. So it was before the learning, and it caters to the fact that it's incredibly important to have accurate background knowledge in science, and to start to, the moment you get into something, start to uncover misconceptions, which I predict will be many and pretty off when thinking about the moon phases. I think there are a lot of misconceptions around that. So starting to tap into those misconceptions. For language arts, it was classic literary analysis, stating a claim, backing it up with quotes and examples, making sure to cite the sources. I found that in the language arts project, I could be a lot more playful. I wrote for my audience. It's meant to entice and entertain. It's catchy, so it's quite artistic actually, compared to the more cut and dry moon phase image. And then it is designed to be an end of the unit sort of culminating activity. So it could be, Dr. Hall and I had talked a little bit about this, it could have been something that was at the end of a unit, in my mind, you know, when we're reading the Hunger Games, or it could be students could choose any book movie combination, read it on their own, and do this project at the very end after having plenty of practice. I think this culminating activity requires that students have a lot of practice with making claims and pulling correct evidence from the text. And then they both very much so required attention to spatial relationships. It was very much the design aesthetic and elements of, it was quite artistic, both of them, in the sense that it had to look good. I attended to clarity of message, so making sure that the point I was trying to make got across, the audience and aesthetics, as I mentioned. And then I thought that, you know, going multimodal is, you can't beat it in terms of, in my mind, being something a little bit past the written word, the verbal word, and getting a little bit deeper into student interest, because I felt a lot of ownership, a lot of engagement and pride. And, you know, it was like, oh, how quickly can I do this assignment so that I can move on to the next thing I have to do? Ended up spending a lot of time on both of these simple things because it's fun. So there you go.
So it's really interesting to hear you talk about it, because you can really see how these multimodal assignments that you made really support disciplinary literacy practices. Mm-hmm. So what stands out to me is that in your moon phase, right, activity, they have to have scientific accuracy, right? And the Hunger Games, or where they're doing a book movie pair, they're doing literary analysis, they're making a claim. In both cases, I mean, some of that, it's still finding evidence and making claims and making statements about what you know about the moon, or what you know about the book and the movie and the characters and the plot and etc. But how you represent that and how it gets taken up by either your teacher or your peers as being an acceptable claim or not is very different, right? Because the tools you use to make that for the moon are not the same, or if they are, they're not used the same way that you're going to use them to make your literary analysis and make your claim. So it's really a nice example, I think, of showing teachers how to do these compositions, but in ways that support disciplinary literacy practices as well.
I agree. And just listening to you talk about it, I was thinking, okay, well, what if I used Google Drawings to do the infographic on Hunger Games? And what if I used the infographic software to do the moon phase app? And I think the same differences would still apply. And I'd have very different examples still, because you attend to different things with the different disciplines.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not, you can use the same tool, Google, what do you say, Google Drawings, right? Or you could have or you could use the infographic tool for both of them. But how you do it and what kinds of information goes in there and how you think about it is completely different. And I think that really comes across nicely in this graphic. So
cool.
Thank you so much, Erin. We really appreciate having you and taking the time to share with us what, some examples of how you've used multimodal compositions in your disciplines, and, what kinds of skills it supports, and that you would have the opportunity, teachers would have the opportunity to teach their students. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you can catch all of my videos. And while you're at it, let me know in the comments if this has helped you, or if you have any questions about how to move forward with your journey.